33%.
Right.
And that is his chance of, cancer reoccurring.
And how is he now?
He's alive,
Right.
but only basically incredibly lucky. Because again, he had he took the roll of a dice, and he got a 6. There are many people who go on to do these alternative treatments, alternative therapies that do not get lucky at all. Again, there's some really horrifying stories of what goes on down at the Gerson Clinic down in Mexico, because they've been banned from doing this treatment in the USA, so they've had to move their operations down to Mexico.
Yeah, that's right.
And there's a story that always sticks in my mind of a woman. She had, when she was first scanned, tumor was it was tiny. It wasn't that big. She went down to Mexico and started doing the Gerson therapy, and she noticed she was getting fatter while she was down there. Her tumor had absolutely ballooned. It was it was huge. It was almost the size of a football.
Right.
When they actually had to come to treat her, and this was because she was so terrified by these people who kept on saying to her, don't take chemotherapy. It's all this big pharma. Again, you'll find it's big pharma, and at the end of the day, this is scientifically proven to work. Cancer, the chemotherapy and the stuff that we have. A lot of what they're saying is, it's alternative medicine. If they could prove that their medicine worked, then that's what it would be. It would be medicine.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be alternative.
Yeah. As Tim Minchin says, in his thing. I know. Now, look, if there are fake cancer cures out there, and I mean, there may very well be. And in fact, there probably are. I mean, I've known people who say that crystals can cure cancer, homeopathy can cure cancer. I don't believe that at all, and I wouldn't recommend it. However, I mean, I've heard from people. I mean, the author Ken Wilber, his wife had Gerson therapy for a while. She did go into remission after Gerson therapy. Unfortunately, she actually got another tumor 5 years later. But and I've known people who have had conventional treatment, including chemotherapy and surgery and radiotherapy, etc., who have had tumors that balloon, as you put it. So again, I mean, we can exchange anecdotes, I suppose, but that's a bad way of doing it. And I mean, this is a difficult situation, because I do understand what your point is, and as far as scientific testing goes, and this counts for other things that you've discussed as well, maybe GMOs, chemtrails, etc., there are political influences at work here. It's not just scientific influences. So, and I'm not saying it's just about money. I mean, the thing is, big pharma does exist. There are people in the pharmaceutical industry that are making a healthy living off all this, and it is a huge industry. Have you ever seen World Without Cancer?
No, I haven't.
It's a good introduction to this. It's quite an old audio that was made by G. Edward Griffin, I think sometime in 1960 something. Now, he actually made this just before President Nixon declared the war on cancer in, I think, 1968, and he actually said that they're going to beat cancer. We're going to beat cancer within 20 years, etc., etc. And of course, that never happened. But I mean, it is what I mean by political influences, whatever they are, is that when scientists are human, just like everyone else, science is a great thing. I'm not people. I mean, there's Beats out on the forum, who I know is listening this evening, because he's wanted to hear you for a long time. He says I'm anti-science. He calls me anti-science. I'm not anti-science, and I think that science is exactly what it's cracked up to be. In an apolitical world, in a vacuum, science could draw these perfect circles, and we would know everything. But there are political influences at work here, I think. Now, a good example, and I'll give you a good example. Now, there's somebody I know who I can't name. I will be able to name her in a few months, but it's an ongoing problem. She's a registered nurse. She's been treating someone not with Gerson therapy, but with another treatment. with cannabis oil. Have you heard of that? I think you
Yeah.
mentioned it. Now, she's not been treated. It's not one of her patients during the course of her work, because she's a domiciliary nurse. It's someone she knows privately, and this woman is now in remission. This lady had quite a late stage category 5 tumor apparently. It's now gone. She's now in remission, and this lady has been suspended from her job, and she's now waiting disciplinary procedures, and it looks like she's gonna lose her job. She'll lose a lot as a result of this. She may be able to negotiate some of her pension back and take retirement, I don't know, but she's now in serious trouble. And for someone perhaps earlier in her career, they'd lose everything for this. I feel more confident when scientists say Gerson therapy doesn't work, etc., etc., if these kinds of pressures were not on them. Because how do I know they're saying it because they've honestly concluded this through scientific investigation, or they're just scared? Because scientists have rent to pay too. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. I think the thing with the cancer, well, not, sorry, not cancer, cannabis at the moment. If you look at a lot of the work that is going on with cannabinoids, which is what they're looking at, not everything else in the cannabis is junk. It's the cannabinoids that they're looking at, and there is a lot of research at the moment coming out, which is saying, and this is all scientific research, which is saying, actually, we're getting really good results in mice when we're using these cannabinoids. However, sometimes we're not getting so good results. And at the moment, a lot more testing really needs to be done on whether it can or cannot work. Again, one of the big things that's stopping a lot of this research going forwards is the cannabis laws in the UK.
Yeah, I know.
So again, I'd love to see more of this research go forward and this looked into.
Yeah.
But again, it's very 50-50. And again, the whole cannabis oil thing, I'm not for it because again, there's a lot of evidence that says a lot of it's anecdotal. A lot of it, again, for everything we've learned about cancer over the past 40 years, we still don't know how it starts, how it begins. We don't know what triggers it. So, you get a lot of, again, these quacks and people going forward and saying, we know how cancer starts. It starts like this. And then you're just looking at them saying, you should be making billions if you know the answer.
Well, yeah.
Where's your, that's Nobel Prize territory. And, my usual retort for when people bring this up is, well, I hope to see you on the next, Nobel Prize list.
Well, yeah, ideally, that's what would happen. However, like I said, I think there are other forces at work here, and it's not just about money. It's not just about greed. I think there are other forces at work. I mean, I want to talk to you about the free energy video as well this evening. But let me just bring up another example. It's indirectly related to this. It concerns GMO foods. I know you've talked about GMO foods on your videos. In a sense, we know GMO foods are supposedly safe. We've been told they're safe because they've been tested. Now, Miles, Miles Power. Now he's done more on this because he's reviewed the genetic roulette video and things like that. I would like to. I do wonder.
I actually got to see him a couple of weeks ago.
Oh right, is he? Because
I think he was in he does a lot of the Skeptics in the Pub events.
Yeah, he's booked to speak at Oxford sometime, so I'll hopefully go and see him.
I'd highly recommend you go along to see him, and I pretty much guarantee if you asked him, he would come on your show.
Well, he'd be very welcome. I mean, he's spoken to other people. Then he'd be very welcome to come on the show. Yeah, because I'd like to hash this out with him as well. But in a sense, we were faced with a very similar situation because I've actually been to other events where people have spoken about this event, about the actual politics that's going on within the GMO world, and especially the testing of it. Now, one of these did come to the surface. Arpad Pusztai, have you heard of him?
I think so.
Yeah, he's the guy. I mean, he was quite famous a couple of years ago because there was a big fuss over the genetically modified potatoes. He and his wife Susan Bardosh, they worked for the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food. It's today called DEFRA, Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. But they were employed to test a new form of genetically modified potato to see if it was safe. And
Oh
Yeah.
yes, I know what paper
Well,
you're talking about. Yeah.
basically, Pustice, he did these experiments on rats, and he just presented his data. He couldn't actually attend the conference, the Alternative View 2 conference, because he had a stroke and he was he was at his hospital bed in Hungary. His wife actually got on a plane, flew to the venue, which luckily was at a hotel by the airport, and did his address in proxy. But she did her own address as well. They presented their data, the work they'd done on rats, and he concluded that these should never be fed to humans. They're not suitable for human consumption. And the math turned around and said to him, "Wrong answer, Arpad," basically. And so, I mean, when you see a scientist stand up and say, "I've concluded that this genetically modified flavor saver tomato, whatever, is safe," you've not done this experiment yourself, neither have I. Is he really standing up saying that because he's concluded it through honest, proper science, or because he's got a mountain of broken careers underneath him and he doesn't want to get down there himself? This is what concerns me.
Well, again, if you look at what
You put the sound up
people
a bit,
have,
Molly.
oh yeah, again, if you look at what people have, said when his paper's been peer reviewed, straight away is a major problem. And if you've ever owned a rat, one of the things you should actually never give them is potato peelings.
Yeah.
So he essentially fed rats on a non-stop diet of potatoes,
Mm.
and of course, there's going to be, you know,
Well, he
deaths.
had two groups of rats. He had a control group which were being fed normal potatoes, and he had another group which were being fed these new type of genetically modified potatoes. And there was a difference between the two. Sure, I imagine rats. Well, rats are quite omnivorous, I think, but I didn't know they couldn't eat potatoes. But
Yeah, well, they can't eat potato skins.
right, potato skins. But even if they weren't, I
And
mean,
even then,
um, unless he was fraudulently giving the GMO group potato skins, he was giving the other one normal potatoes.
well, again, this is the
Which
other
I
thing
don't
you
think he
don't
was
know
doing.
because I'm sure you know about the white rat test with the tumours.
I've heard, is that the one? Hmm.
That was one that Miles has done the video on it about the white rats drinking Roundup.
Oh, I think I've seen that. Yeah, I don't remember the
Yeah,
details, but carry on.
yeah.
Give us a.
Basically, that test is in itself highly flawed because they essentially got 10 rats, and 10 rats by itself is nothing when you're trying to scientifically test something because there's so much that could go wrong. Maybe these rats could get sick, and this affects the results. You don't know. 10 is just too small a test number. And then you've got the next big thing of the guys who were writing the paper are heavily involved in the anti-GMO movement.
Right.
And this again,
Do you think they
this
have a
is
vested interest? Hmm.
yeah, I certainly think they do because I think there's so much scaremongering about genetic modification. And let me just clarify that if someone says the word uh, genetic modification, it's a tool. Essentially, it's like a hammer.
Yeah.
Genetic modification is no different than a hammer when it comes down to it. If you're looking at how it's used, and genetic modification is not just on plants. That can be used on materials. It can be potentially used to synthesize oil and things like that. So there is a lot of potential doing stuff with genetic modification, and we can't move on to doing the other things because we've been stuck on this for what the past was it almost 20 years now,
Hmm.
and we just can't get past this conversation.
Well, it's yeah. It
Because
depends if this. Well, it depends really if this conversation is necessary to have. Then maybe it's a good thing we haven't. Do you see what I mean? It all depends on whether this is you believe this is a fatuous issue that we should get over.
But again, that's the
I mean, if
problem
you're going to talk
because
about
you
vested
have
interest, you see, I mean, one of the things they said in Genetic Roulette, I don't know if Miles addressed this, but was that there's a big crossover between people who actually are shareholders or involved in Monsanto and other companies like that in some way, and the Food and Drug Administration. There's a big overlap in membership, and so maybe they had a vested interest. Do you see what I mean?
well, of course they're going to have a
There are
vested
political
interest.
there are political forces at work in this
It's
world which can distort science. That's my only point. I'm not against any of this technology. I mean, it's
but
abuse.
that's the other thing is that let's say a paper comes out and it says genetic modification is absolutely a-okay. This is our test. This is how we did it. What would happen next is it would go forward to peer review.
Yeah.
And if peer review comes back and says, um, actually no, hang on, um, this test is false. It doesn't go right. Um, we can't do anything about it. And one of the big things is we don't have, enough scientists getting out there and getting, the general public to understand um, what's actually going on.
Mm.
Because you listen to like the environmental movement, and they'll tell you, 1,000 bad things about genetic modification, but they'll never tell you, the good things that we can do with it.
Mm.
And one of the big things is golden rice.
Yeah, Miles did a video about this. Well, it's still
Yeah,
banned, I know.
yeah.
I mean,
Golden rice has huge positive like things,
it
advantages
contains more
to
vitamins than normal rice. It contains
yeah,
vitamin A. And I know that, Ollie, it's true. However, I mean, I'm not familiar with the golden rice issue as such. I know Greenpeace are against it, but then I disagree with an awful lot of what Greenpeace says on other issues as well. But if, for instance, it was tested and it was found to, and something suspicious happened, like it did with the potatoes, then I would be very worried. I would be very concerned that there's these kinds of. I'd like to be in a world where scientists can actually say something which may be detrimental to a certain commercial product without losing their jobs.
yeah. I think but again, the science will vindicate them
It should, yeah.
at the end of the
But
day.
in an
The science will
apolitical world, we'd know one way or the other, and we could trust these pronouncements when they happen. But I mean, there's the pressure. I mean, the kind of things that, I mean, you listen to scientists, the things they say to each other. It's
yeah. Well, again, I think that's again one of the problems. One of the biggest things I always said we lost was when we lost Tomorrow's World. I think
I should like
Tomorrow's
that,
World
yeah.
it did an amazing job communicating science to the general public,
Mm.
and we've lost that. There isn't anything out there now, probably
Can you put the sound up a bit, Ollie?
bar a couple of YouTube videos of people discussing science. This is why I like Miles Power and Thunderfoot, because they explain science. It's in a good way and it's easy to understand.
Yeah, I mean, I used to enjoy those programs when I was growing up. I mean, I think science reporting has gone downhill in recent years, and that's a concern of mine. And it ties in with what we've been talking about here. I mean, for instance, we have BBC Horizon, which have made some excellent programs. I've been watching them since I was a kid, and I find them fascinating. But they've also made some right clangers, and they have been deliberately misleading it sometimes. I know they, and very often there's an attempt, I think, to distort and to mislead the public, people who are not experts. And we're faced with a choice: is we can confess we're not experts, so we just should shut up and stop even thinking about these things and just do what the experts tell us, or we can risk being called conspiracy theorists, which is well, I suppose it's literally true. I mean, but yeah, it's, you know what I mean. That term has so much pejorative baggage attached to it.
It's not just organisations like the BBC though. Like I've just put out a video today on a guy who basically said that light therapy is 100% more effective than Prozac for depression. And I had a look at his article, and I had a look at the paper he was referring to, and it's completely wrong. And this is on a website called Truth Activist. So again, it's not just organisations like the BBC. It's also web organisations as well that are also have a vested interest because they themselves, pardon me, do not want to see GMO succeed. And there's, I'd say that a lot of the environmentalist movement is vastly a lot more anti-science than they actually want to admit or believe.
I mean, I suppose the another force that is involved here is the fact that we're living in a world where there's more people that need to be fed. The population is growing, standards of lifestyle are growing, poverty is being relieved, which is a good thing. But the question's gone, well, how do we feed all these people? And there are people in the environmental movement like Mark Linus, who lives here in Oxford, who's now very pro-GMO. I suppose the issue, I would say, I mean, this is something you discussed on the Enemy Within Radio, I remember. But do you believe that GMO is actually necessary in order to adjust agriculture to cope with the new demands of the world?
Oh yes, definitely. I mean, you can grow crops faster. You can, again, in the case of golden rice, you can put in vitamins that are not, readily so available in third world countries, to, help, people develop better. So there's lots of stuff that, again, we can do, but there's so much, not only wrong information and inaccurate information and, scare tactic information out there, that it's very hard, I think, for the general public to go out there and say, I know this is true. And because there's, again, so much information, they can't say that.
Mm. Well, I mean, sorry,
again,
carry on.
Again, if you go back to, I said today, I've had the guy comment on my YouTube page. He was looking for stuff to do with cancer.
Mm. Well, this is, I suppose, my own point. My own view is, I mean, I understand that as the concerns of the world. I understand that we are faced with a major problem in the years to come in terms of nutrition and sustainability. But there are other solutions. There are other solutions that don't involve GMOs, and I know you and Tom disagreed over this on the EWR, and I mean, I myself take a different view too, because have you heard of Graham Harvey? Because he's an interesting chap. I don't know if you read my report on the BASIS conference that took place in August. Did you ever read my blog as well as watch the videos? All right. Well, Graham Harvey is an agricultural scientist, and he was talking about how in the old days, in olden time farming, you had a problem with pests and things like that, and reduced yields because of pests. But they did look for solutions to these, and one of those was rotational farming. This is where, and there's a painting by Sir John Vanbrugh, which actually it's a painting of a couple, a rich rural couple. And in the back, but the interesting bit is in the background, because you can see a farm in the background. This was a painting done sometime in the 18th century, and you can see cattle in one field, which is pasture, and in a neighbouring field you see some farmhands harvesting a wheat field. And what Graham said is that in those days people used to actually do that. They would actually manure one field and use it for pasture manure on the other, and then they'd shift the cattle and the livestock onto another field and use that for dairy, meat, etc. Then grow arable on the field which has been used previously for pasture. The farms today are different. You tend to have livestock on one field which is using pasture, which is pasture only, and then you get the arable fields which is using agrochemicals and things like that on the other. And then so the livestock field has a manure problem. They don't know what to do with all the manure, and then the arable field has it has soil depletion. You get things like the Dust Bowl in the United States in the 1930s. And what Graham Harvey was suggesting is that farming could be vastly improved by returning to rotational farming. Do you think that's a good idea?
Well, again, possibly. But again, you've got what are the farmers? What's their take on this?
Ollie, sorry, mate. Sorry, it's about to hit 30 minutes. I've just stopped recording. Hold that thought. Sorry, I should have alerted you a bit earlier. I should have done this a bit earlier, but I was just for concentrating. Where's my earphones? Hang on. Right, it's this one. Right, copy, paste. Come on. Rename BHM3. Sorry to interrupt you, and I was hoping to interrupt you at a more opportune moment. Yeah, you just asked, well, what do the farmers themselves think of that? You just said, Right. Do you want to carry? Do you want to carry on, or do you want me to reply to that? Which would you prefer?
Yeah, we'll go with replying for that. It'd be easy for you when you're ready.
Sure, I'll do that. Okay.
Sure.
I guess so. I'd certainly ask a farmer. I mean, I know there are some farmers, I mean, even people I've spoken to and heard talking, who are very keen on this idea. I mean, others are less keen. I know farmers are a bit clannish as they want to be. But what's your experience been?
Again, well,
Could you put the sound up? Sorry, Ollie. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've always said, yeah, speak to the farmers, speak to the people that actually, do this. What are their problems? What are their issues? What are they facing? Because it comes down to an issue, as it always, does, is supply and demand. And as you've said, food demand is growing. So a simple answer to solve that is grow more food.
Yeah.
And obviously, this creates, other issues and problems. And again, it's not an easy question, and I don't think anyone at the moment can say for 100% that theirs is the 100% right answer. Again, if you ask, I asked after that radio show, I actually phoned up a farmer, and I asked him all about what he thinks to organic, and he hates organic crops. He says it would take him double the time to grow what he would a normal crop. It's double the cost. It's double the cost of chemicals he has to use because it's organic, and organic has to use their own chemicals, which in most cases can be even just as, if not more, toxic than the chemicals non-organic crops have to use. There's there's all sorts of different complications. So one solution, crop rotation. It might be right. Maybe we should go back to crop rotation, but the question then becomes: is this, more work for farmers who, in this day and age, at the moment, are facing, labour?
Yeah, we'd have to make it economical, wouldn't we?
People don't want to work on farms.
Yeah, we'd have to make that economical.
So,
I know there's a problem with the rural industry and rural society because villages are shrinking, people are moving into towns. Yeah, I know that's so. Yeah, you're right. We'd have to make it economically viable, definitely. But I mean, there's other things. For example, I mean, I've never been a farmer myself, but I'm very interested in terra preta. Have you heard of terra preta? Now, this is a particular kind of it's almost a kind of soil. It's almost like a separate kind of soil, but it's used as a fertilizer in some parts of South America. The word, it's actually Portuguese. It means dark soil. It's black soil. This has proved to be enormously fertile, and it was used to support a very large civilization in South America. This lot of the South American pre-Columbian civilizations actually survived for so long on very, very small plots of farmland. Even in the middle of rainforest, they would have these small plots of farmland, but they managed to grow all the food they needed because they had terra preta. They had to use terra preta in the farming methods. Now, if that could be brought back, we could be faced with we could have a wonderful future with a massively productive farms using terra preta, and I think that's another excellent idea. And as far as
well, again, it's the same with hydroponics. There's no dirt involved at all. You just grow the plants in water. There is potentially a lot of solutions to use, but again, no one's advancing the ideas forward. Again, because at the moment you've got the whole sort of organic boom, which is some farmers have taken to it because again there's more work for them, but in return they can sell that for double what they could a normal crop would fetch them. So again, there's a lot of economic things going on, and then you've got the thing of if you use that terra preta, is that organic friendly?
It is actually, it's completely non-toxic, and it is organic. Yeah, it's organic. It's been used in ancient times by the Indians of South America. But I mean, now obviously there is an organic boom. In fact, producers are having trouble keeping up with the demand right now. But obviously it needs to be improved. There's a lot of improvement that needs to be made. So I'd hope to see a time when we could actually have terra preta organic farms rotating, and maybe that's the solution to our problems. And that would actually that would actually solve the problem without resorting to genetically modified food. Now, if it can do that, if it can give you all the proposed benefits of genetic modification without all the controversy, then I don't see how anyone can disagree with that.
Well, there's an even better solution. It's